Welcome! I am Pseychie, and this is an overview about the newly released Dead Cells Castlevania DLC. In this video, as someone who has made Dead Cells content extensively over the past 2 years, I'm going to cover my first impression to almost everything you need to know regarding this DLC, what it adds to the game, how you can access the content, a quick walkthrough to get you started, as well as a sneak peek at a secret level where you play as Richter, one of the NPCs in the update. And finally ending it off with a discussion on whether or not you should buy the DLC. Without further ado, let's get started. Return to Castlevania adds 3 new biomes. It's technically 2, but we'll get on that in a second. It's just a little bit complicated. And it also adds 2 bosses into the game. The new biomes will replace the 2nd and 3rd levels of the game, as well as the 2nd to last biome. So it adds both early game and late game content. The early game biomes are the castle outskirts and Dracula's castle. Then you fight Death as a mid-game boss after that. The endgame biome is again Dracula's castle, but this variant is a little different. You then fight Dracula as a final boss. However, you can only access one of the DLC areas per run, so if you go to the early game biomes, you will not be able to access the end game biomes in the same run. In order to access Castle Outskirts, you just have to find an NPC in the prisoner's quarters, saying how you should help him settle a score with the source of evil that's plaguing the world. In Castle Outskirts, most of the puzzles are pretty self-explanatory, but at one point during the biome, you will find a cat-like creature that bounces around across platforms. If you manage to catch it, you'll then find an NPC later on that thanks you for finding the cat. Upon leaving this NPC, however, be sure to interact with the pet on your way out, as this will unlock a new pet to your arsenal. Later on, you'll enter a lore room where you awaken Alucard, who states he needs someone to stop his father. At this point, there is a hidden little pocket to the right side of the lore room. Interacting with a shield will unlock Alucard's shield. Make your way to Dracula's castle, and at this point I won't spoil too much of the surprise for you, but once you're at the end of the biome, your character will be dragged down at the very last second before the Master's Keep to fight Death, which is a mid-game boss. After finishing off Death, you will meet Alucard, saying how he needs some time to figure out how to make your way to Dracula. At this point, you can either restart the run to see the next part of the DLC, or continue on with the run. Just note that you can't access the endgame DLC biomes in this run. Upon returning to the beginning, Alucard will meet you again and state how you need to go to the clock tower to access the new endgame content. Make your way there, but most importantly, do not go to Castle Outskirts again, as that will lock you out of the endgame DLC area. After defeating Timekeeper, you will be able to access Dracula's castle again. Now structurally, I didn't find any changes relative to the early game variant, but Dracula this time around will occasionally show up and try to stop you. His attacks include launching fireballs, spawning some bats, turning an enemy into an elite, and at one point even turning your screen upside down for a brief moment. Make your way into a lore room where you will rescue Richter. This time around, you'll need a petrified key to access the last biome. Explore around and you'll encounter a Medusa-like mini-boss. Defeat it and you'll get the key. When making your way to Master's Keep this time, instead of getting dragged down to fight Death, you'll actually be able to access the final boss. Alucard and Richter will meet you right before the final chamber, except they state that they conveniently can't help you in the fight. So yeah, you're on your own. Face off against Dracula, but just be warned, this is one of the more gimmicky and chaotic final bosses in the game. He is not going down easily. Now, you might be wondering about how to access that hidden level where you play as Richter that's shown in one of the teasers. Well, after you have freed Richter from Dracula's castle in the endgame biome once, in a consecutive run, if you return to Dracula's castle in the endgame, go to the same lore room where you rescued Richter and you'll find an empty cage. Upon interacting with this empty cage, will enter you into Richter mode, where you play as Richter. Now, this version of the game is slightly different than the usual Dead Cells. You often find that the controls don't exactly match up to the way the beheaded works, as jumping and dashing all seem a little bit different. Of course, this is really just to stay true to the Castlevania vibes. Now, the level itself is fairly straightforward, and you probably won't find any trouble with it. One tip I will give is that try to hit the blue chandeliers that are hanging around, as destroying one will give you a heart, and by expanding 4 of them, you will be able to unleash your skill. Some food even drops from walls as well as the chandeliers, so you'll probably be fine on health as well. At one point during the level, there is a hidden outlook to the right side of a wall, Now, I'm not sure if this level generation is going to be the exact same for everyone, but if you find the secret area, you'll see a glimpse of Alucard flying off, and then you'll get the secret blueprint Alucard's sword. At the end of the level, you'll face off against the same Medusa-like creature that you saw in Dracula's castle. Defeat it and the level is complete, and you will be able to return back as the Beheaded, with the secret blueprint in tow. Now, a point of discussion I want to end off this video at is whether or not Return to Castlevania is a good purchase if you're debating about it. Now, I've stated in my video regarding Dead Cells DLCs that beginners should prioritize DLCs that cover early game content to buy first if you don't plan on buying any of the bundles. The reason being that the extra content is available right away. You just have to make it past the first biome. That being said, this DLC is double the price of the previous ones we've had so far. So while it does add a lot more content into the game, just know that half of it may not be as easily accessible if you're just starting out. Now, a word of caution, all this information is gathered based on my own experiences with an early copy of the DLC. Seeing how there is a lot of small secrets, such as the final boss Dracula reacting differently to a lot of the Beheaded's outfits, I wouldn't be surprised that more secrets will be revealed in the weeks to come. So that's going to be the end of this overview of Return to Castlevania. If you want to see showcases of the new weapons that this DLC had to offer, there will be some showcase videos on my channel in the following weeks. Thanks for watching and enjoy the DLC.